Welcome to a new episode of our MBSE podcast. After a long time, we are once again doing an episode of our MBSE Around the World series, and in which we focus on a country or region and talk to our guests about how MBSE is used there. This time, we picked Southeast Asia. So it's quite a big region. We already had an episode about China more than 3 years ago, or a long time ago, but China is not part of the Southeast Asia region. Our guests are Robert Ong and Marco Forlingieri. Regular podcast listeners may remember Marco. We talked to him about MBPLE some time ago. And well, anyway, let them introduce themselves and explain why they are the right guest to talk about MBSE in Southeast Asia. And let's start with Robert.
Oh, thank you, Tim. So I'm Robert. Currently, I'm the INCOSE Singapore chapter president elite, and also I work at the Dassault Systems as the industry process consultant. So previously, before the acquisitions between Dassault and No Magic, I'm actually working with No Magic and stationed in Bangkok as a part of the R&D since the year 2000. So I've been with No Magic very long times. So the scope of what I'm doing in Asia is that I'm covering the Asia country. So definitely Southeast Asia is one of the regions that I'm taking care of. So my background is starting from very long time UML. I start with my career in UML together with the Boron together. So I am the Boron ALM consultants before I joined No Magic until now. So pretty much I've been pushing, model-based MBA, all those things since UML, 0.9 until, come along with SysML and UAF. Pretty much about me. Thanks.
Oh, cool. Yeah, and Marco.
Hi, Tim. Hi, Christian.
Hey.
Yeah. So I'm based in Singapore, and I work for IBM. I'm the technical leader for IBM Southeast Asia for the engineering portfolio. And of course, for INCOSE, I am the assistant or deputy director for the Asia and Oceania sector of INCOSE. I also, within INCOSE, chair the product line engineering working group. And I've been working always since 2012, 13 with MBSE, product line engineering. These are the main two topics. Model-based product line engineering in different companies. I started my career at the Bombardier Transportation, where I was already somehow collaborating with Robert at that time. And so I know Robert since a very long time as well. And actually, it's one of the reasons why I am in Singapore. So, yeah.
Okay, cool. So, our listeners are listening to this podcast worldwide, and maybe we give them an idea. What are typical industries around Singapore in the Southeast Asia area who might use systems engineering or model-based systems engineering?
Marco?
Me?
Yeah, what do you think?
Yeah, I would say aerospace and defense, like, in every country. We have a bit of automotive. I would say not that much, but a bit of automotive industry. And ship builders, somehow also related to defense. What else, Robert? What else do we have?
Yeah, so I will put Southeast Asia into what I will call the precision engineering. So you will see that the core business is more about, I would say, manufacturing on the components, right? Doing the MRO. So it's more that kind of as a core business in all the Southeast Asia. Definitely Singapore is one of the hubs. Then the other rest of the Southeast Asia. Altogether have 10 countries, by the way, right? In Southeast Asia, or the Asians community. So as Marco mentioned about the aerospace, is one of the main drive, definitely the defense side, marine and offshore, a little bit automotive, But I will see that those are the traditionals, what we see from this precision engineering part. But I will say that a lot of actually recently you see the startups, right? The startups on autonomous car, ship. The other area is the renewable energy, hydrogens. There are a couple of, in Australia have some converting the diesel to be dual with the hydrogen and diesel for the engine. There are a couple of startup in Singapore as well, trying to change on the hydrogens, engine base, the new renewable energy. So those startup is something that is quite interesting to look up in Southeast Asia nowadays. The other one is very quite booming would be the space sector, right? Other than the traditional oil and gas equipment. So, Singapore looking into a lot of manufacturing for QSAT, design on the QSAT. The same go for the Australia as well, right? Some exploration area on the industry is on the mining on the space. So there's been a topic that people are actually looking into as well. So those I will summarize into what I see the industry that is heavily related to, our system engineering.
Okay. And which countries belong to the Southeast Asia area?
You have 10 of them, right? So take for Singapore, Malaysia, Indonesia, Philippines, Brunei, Australia, Vietnam is one,
Cambodia,
Philippines,
Laos.
Cambodia, Laos.
We
Australia
missed
is
some.
also, and
No,
New
Australia,
Zealand?
Australia is not.
No.
Oh.
Australia is not. We have 8 already. Where's the other 2? I cannot remember. They have 10 of them.
Indonesia?
Thailand.
Thailand, yeah, Thailand, the
Thailand.
important one, right? Singapore.
And maybe it's Myanmar considered South
Myanmar,
Asia?
yes.
Myanmar, yeah.
Yeah, 10 of them.
Okay.
Yeah, 10.
Okay,
So we have the 10.
Yeah, so
But Robert mentioned Australia several times because we both covered also Australia
yes,
and Singapore and many countries of the region look at Australia in
It's a
terms of
power
system
meeting.
engineering. Yes, because it's the closest,
Yes.
I would say, hub for system engineering knowledge and defense knowledge expertise.
Yeah, Australia is a very unique area. But anyway, it's not a part of the ASEAN per se, right? Yeah.
Yeah, right. And how well is systems engineering in general, or in specific model-based systems engineering, used in the industry you mentioned?
I will let Marcos to mention about that too. So I think my experience, I will say that a lot of MBSE, more specifically into the SysML side, right? You will see that they have a lot of influence is actually from the counterpart on their counterpart from the European and American side. So a lot of defense is actually looking into this and start curious about it. I will say not very in much on the productions. Definitely a lot of the automotive part, right? They actually influence into some of the advanced engineering that related like autonomous drive. Then those are people are doing that. Medical devices, there are a couple of them is actually practicing trying to adopt the MBSE in that particular area. But I would say most of the maturity in the Asian country toward this system engineering is not quite there yet. So in the line of our work, I think Marco will agree is that there are a lot of education we need to do. And you will encounter that most of the company, especially their core teams are actually have a background from the discipline engineer, right? Engineering, the discipline engineer. So it's pretty much driven by the discipline engineering mentality, right? So it's quite difficult to really realize the real potential value what the system engineering can bring up to the organizations, right? By the nature, also manufacturing driven, MRO driven, component driven. So it's a really quite difficult topics on the maturity side.
So
I would say,
please, Marco.
No, I just wanted to add on what Robert said, that on the system engineering side, we always need to distinguish we are countries like Singapore, that is more advanced than a country like Vietnam in system engineering. Okay, and the main reason is already language, because what are the sources for Vietnamese people, Vietnamese engineers to know about system engineering? Okay, so if they don't know English well, if they've not studied in English, it'll be already very hard for them. But I would say Singapore is definitely as a role model even if it's sometimes we go, Robert and I, we are competitors somehow, but we are similar customers, and we go to different customers. We see that even those that pretend that they know system engineering, right? Indeed, they have sometimes very poor understanding, or their own understanding of system engineering that's not based on standard, that's not based on INCOSE handbook, INCOSE practices. But that's even in Singapore, I would say. I agree with Robert. And let's not talk about MBSE, because MBSE is very limited. It's still here in the phase of let's have a look at it. Let's try to understand what it is, which values brings to the company. POC, I would say, still in the POC phase.
Yeah, very interesting.
Yeah, Marco bring up a very good point, right? ASEAN, we have 10 countries, right? We are dealing with 10 languages. Singapore alone is similar to Switzerland. They're actually having 3 languages commonly spoken in the country, right? So it's very interesting culture and ecosystem that we are dealing with there too.
Yeah, that's very interesting.
English is not so widespread.
Pardon?
Sorry, and English is not so widespread in the countries, so that it's not
depends.
normal that. Okay.
Other than Singapore, is not really that widely, commonly used, right? I mean, from the conversation level, not really there yet. Most of the engineers, they're good in reading, right? They definitely can write a report, express what they want to talk about from the technical side. There are no problem with that. But in terms of communication, then we'll notice that during the presentation, they will have less questions just because they don't know how to express, right? Once change the presentation, talk to them in their own language, then you bunch of questions coming out right away. So this is very interesting and very challenging at the same time, dealing with the Asian countries.
Yeah. We made a similar experience last Saturday. So Tim and I, we were invited by INCOSE, because Yutaro Ito, a guy from INCOSE, he translated our SysML v2 book into Japanese to make it better available to
Ito-san.
Japan.
Yes.
Yeah, Ito-san, right.
Yeah.
And I have also a customer who has a digital hub in Singapore, because English is very well spoken there, and And apart from natural language, so what are the typical challenges? So Marco and Robert, you mentioned already some, but is it more systems engineering, systems thinking, which has to be taught to the people, or is it systems engineering process, or is it SysML? Is it simulation? What are the typical challenges for your customers?
Well, yeah, I think we let Marco to pick up this question first from a European's perspective. Then I will give you an Asian's perspective to see how different it is. Yeah, right, Marco?
Yes, I think it's first you need to differentiate, because as I said, even if it's Southeast Asia, there are some commonality. Singapore, Malaysia, maybe it's one thing, then already you go to Vietnam, Thailand, it's different, okay? And in general, if we try to identify some commonalities among the countries, I would say leadership style. Leadership style, it's very top-down driven, right? In Germany, I always have the example, in Germany, engineers dictate the managers. So it's really like that. So knowledge, and I worked 10 years in Germany, and you both know it better than me. But here it's not like that. So decisions are taken top down. So if the top managers are not convinced, don't have the bless on the project, on the MBSE project, system engineering activity, it will not fly.
And are the managers typically engineers, or are they, well, what should I say?
It depends.
It
depends. They could be just manager, or they could have, in general, in engineering, they have an engineering background. Okay. So I would say.
That's helpful.
Yeah, and then maybe just to mention another one, but there are several, is the manufacturing hub. So what Robert said. So it's we don't develop so many safety critical systems in the region, right? So that's why the scope itself of development is not as big or as critical as in Europe, in the US, even in Australia to a certain extent. And that makes the justification of MBSE, just to make an example with MBSE, a bit harder, because it's harder to apply MBSE on manufacturing. It's already sometimes hard to justify the application for smaller companies, and because there is a high investment. But that's why I would say these are for sure two of the many and several challenges that we have. Maybe Robert, if you can add your point of view as an Asian.
Yeah, so my points or my takes on this topic, the challenges, is that after almost 20 years starting from UML, I would say UML is pretty much a failure in Asia, trying to push it, and SysML do a little bit better, but not so much. Partly it's because of the culture, right? So partly Michael mentioned about the top down. The other things that is actually, I will put it in a positive way. You will find out that in Asians, they are more very used to the concept of efficiency. That's why you see a lot of convenience store everywhere, right? If you go to the Singapore airport, you will be surprised how quick, how efficient the airport look like. Now, with that said, the biggest challenge is that how can we introduce system engineering MBSE that can eliminate the replications of what they are doing, right? So they are very used to the solution driven. If you give them problems, the first thing they think about is the solutions, not how you come by the solution, right? So the solution is not to be justified, right? That's what they used to know. That is the thing that works, so stick with it. So that is the challenge actually having. And with this particular mindset, and you find that all the senior managements today, mostly they're really having this solution-driven, disciplined mind. So, yeah, they have an engineering background, but at the same time, to convince them to say that, take a pause, step back to think through what you should do from the system thinking point of view, right? Go through the carve-outs, go to the requirements. For them, it's like overhead, right? So it's very, very difficult in this regard to, as what Marco said, that to convince them, right, to do the right thing first, then, you will reduce your reward, improve your quality. They don't see that way. They are really difficult to look into that. So the education to really appreciate the system engineering is very important, right? To really have things going on, but it's not there yet. So the challenge is to how we can able to show them the efficiency by doing the system engineering and MBSE in this perspective that can really help them. So you will see that like CAD's easy for them to accept, digital twin easy for them to understand and pick up very quickly. But when you go down into the 1D modeling, to the requirements, the more abstract the concept becomes, the more down the road that they will feel that whatever they do, even though it's an abstraction of the description of the systems, but it's a replication of what they did, right? So, like let's say the very simple things like a PLE, in which level? Should we do it in SysML level? Or should we do it in the E architecture level? If you say both level, then you have 150% in both. There is a benefit, right, for each of the approach. But again, it's what they see, right? So if I have 150% in the E architecture level, have every bomb things figured out, why I need the SysML 150% level? For what? Just a simple things that they're always questioning in their mind, struggling. So the mindset, I think, is one of the things that for us trying to push, system engineering and MBSE in Asia that we are struggling to facing.
Even the language is so, they speak Singlish in Singaporean English, right? So, and the language is so pragmatic. It's so, they don't say, yes, I can do it. They just say can. or cannot. Like
Oh.
it's really like short because there's this fast-paced culture here, pragmatic culture,
Yeah.
right? So sometimes it's very difficult to step back and tell them, okay, try to understand a bit better the problem from different perspectives.
Mhm.
Maybe there are different solutions for the problem, not just one solution. This is something not easy to change.
Yeah,
Okay.
right.
Also
That's
because they are
interesting.
successful. They are very successful, at least if you look at Singapore. But I'm always fascinated by Vietnam. Vietnam is a country where there is a big chaos and everything's working in the chaos. So I don't know how it's possible, right? I really would like to study this because it's so chaotic. It seems that any crossroad is going to happen an accident, no? At any time, at any moment, and nothing happens. Is everything perfect like a clock? And this is something I don't know how to explain. No? It's really difficult.
And that's an explanation from an Italian, so be aware.
Yeah, of course. Of course. Of course. Yeah. Was impressed myself. Yeah.
Okay, so what about the new generation? So are there any systems engineering courses provided in Southeast Asia at the universities? So I remember, Marco, you gave a MBSE course in Singapore, and I could give a guest lecture for that. So thanks for the invitation again. Yeah, is it widespread to do systems engineering at the universities?
So if I'm not wrong, in Singapore, there are two system engineering programs, okay?
Mhm.
One from the National University of Singapore and US, and then another one in the SIT, Singapore Institute of Technology. So I taught last year at the SIT, and this year as well, I will teach again, starting end of August, MBSE. And is the only course of MBSE in Singapore, fully on MBSE, what I teach, right? Then I would say in other countries, in Thailand, there is a new Thailand chapter of INCOSE, emerging chapter of INCOSE, that is also pushing system engineering in university, so the teaching of system engineering university. And in Malaysia, I think there are some courses of system engineering. I don't know about Indonesia. I don't know about Vietnam. I don't think in Vietnam there are. And I'm not sure about Philippines. So to give you just some country there.
So Vietnam, they have some universities actually have a close collaborations with the Keio University in Japan, the STM, right? So they are the one that in Japan that is pushing a lot on system engineering and MBSE. So that is one. Actually in Thailand, like there are a couple of university like Lakapan University, but you will find that in ASEAN, the university, the system engineering is actually a subject rather than a degree. So that is actually tell you a lot, right? How they perceive this system engineering. It's just one part of a small things that it's good to have. So overall that I really see for the Asia as a whole, other than the ASEANs, you will see that Japan, they have the Keio University, Tokyo University. China is picking up very quickly in the recent 5 years. And you will find also in Australia, like Adelaide University is one of the main driver on the MBSE and system engineering as well. So I do see that, the trend is coming. But again, as we say that, earlier, it's about the efficiency, right? So if the industry demanding it, then, the university in ASEAN will start looking for it. So they are not the other way around, unfortunately, in Asia, right? That we can find in Japan or in Australia, the university somehow have a close collaboration with the industry, and somehow they have a topic that is actually leading where the industry is trying to go. But not that I observe in ASEAN, right? They are more like following. If the industry now is screaming that, I need engineer, but I cannot find them, then they will start looking into, oh, maybe we should offer something for them. So it's more that way.
Do you have numbers by hand, how many certified systems engineers you have in your chapters? Or do you know, is it
Yeah,
more ASAPs,
I
CSAPs, ESAPs?
yeah, we have a lot of ASAP because Marco mentioned about like SIT, right? There's a
Mhm.
collaboration, so they're pushing a lot. So we actually
Academic equivalency
yeah. So we
program.
have
Mhm.
CSAP,
Cool.
maybe about 10 plus. I can't really remember the number by my heart, but I think we have about 2 or 3 ESAP and 10 plus CSAP in
Mhm.
Singapore chapter. And there are a lot of ASAP, more
Okay.
than 10. Yeah. So yeah, it's not very
Okay.
popular, but yes,
I think
definitely.
that's the gap. So this gap that we have today, I see a big opportunity for INCOSE to fill this gap in
Mhm.
terms of educating industry, educating also a university on system engineering through the academic equivalency program of INCOSE. So I think this gap, needs to be filled, and INCOSE could be one of the best candidates
Mhm.
in.
Mm, true, true.
And
Yeah, so
would
we
it make
also
sense to develop your own certification program? So, for example, in Germany, we have our own systems engineering certification program. It's conformed to the INCOSE program, but well, the main idea was to adapt it more to the German specific culture and so, no? So the INCOSE certification program was too American for us. And it's very successful.
uh,
And maybe because we talked a lot about the culture clash, and so maybe it makes
yes.
sense to have a Southeast Asia certification program, and which is also acknowledged then by INCOSE.
Yeah, that is actually a very good point, right? The cultural difference is a big gap, I think, in this
Mhm.
space. But again, as what Marco just said, it's a really an opportunity, because of the
Mhm.
language boundary. Definitely, it would be good to
Mm.
have to have the to have the native language exam to be available.
Mhm.
Yes.
Yeah.
Also very important, right? To really develop the culture base. But again, the challenge for ASEAN, I will say that 10 country, 10 culture, right?
Mhm.
It
Yeah.
would
Okay.
maybe
Yeah.
work better, like
Yeah.
Japan's, China, even China, Japan, Korea, they are very different. Their
Mhm.
cultural, right? How they work as a company, as a teams, right? So definitely that is very good, and it's a very interesting thing. I think it's bring up very good points. We may look into that.
Mhm.
I think
Yeah.
we should look into that. Yeah,
But
we
it's
should.
not easy, right? So it's not easy because, as Robert said again, many culture. So this is like,
Mhm.
there are too many languages, too many cultures, and they're at very different stage. That would be very hard to make it one for Southeast Asia.
Mhm.
Yeah, we've been trying to help a lot of customer adopt MBSE and SysML through all these different country. Pretty much, I can still not able to find one way to rule them all, right? So each of the company will have their uniqueness, the different way to needs to actually doing system engineering from what I observe.
Mhm. Okay.
But it's something that we should spend some time to do research on. I do agree with that.
Yeah. And what is the situation in the job markets regarding systems engineering, or maybe engineering in general? So do the companies currently find enough systems engineers or software engineers, mechanical engineers, and so forth?
Oh,
Um,
I give
yeah,
you a
Marco.
data on the students that I had last year.
Mm-hmm.
So they finished they graduated in April this year. So those that gave a
Mm-hmm.
course last semester or last year, and the majority found a job within 2 months within Singapore, right? So that's definitely a
Mm-hmm.
small area. And what I was very happy because some of them decided to go for a system engineering job instead of going for management, project manager jobs. And thanks to the courses that they attended, and they understood that maybe they should follow more the expertise than the money. due to the fact that they're at the beginning of their careers, right? So I would say for Singaporean, so let's take Singapore, it's not difficult at all to find a job. Then I would say I know companies in Malaysia that have difficulties in hiring. So in the ship manufacturing, ship engineering, shipbuilding, so it's difficult to find people that have even with no experience in the previous work experience, right? And Vietnam, let's take one company, VinFast. VinFast is electric car manufacturer, and there is a very big turnover, and so many people go and leave the company. I would say it's very dynamic. It's not difficult to find a job if you are an engineer. Now, if you are a system engineer, I would say you need to find a job as an engineer and then try to bring the message inside the company, right? The system engineering message. So you cannot find a job as a system engineer. It's very hard, I would say.
Yeah, so I will reinforce what Marco said about, right, is that, when you look up in ASEAN, in Asia, generally look into system engineer, the description is different than what we understood. Right, it's more on the IT, it's more on the data science, data analyst, system analyst, those kind of expectations from the company. The true system engineer, in these few years, we do see a number of them increasing, but mostly we limit to those foreign company who are, have the subsidiary in the Singapore ASEANs, like Boeing, Airbus. Then you will find the defense research institutes start talking about the system engineering that fit into what we understood, right, from the inclusive perspective. So there's a very important point that, like, it's easy to find a job or not. Definitely the skill set that the system engineer has, if you really have it, you go to the interview, I can guarantee that you get a job. But they don't really advertise in the way that they're looking for system engineer. They don't really have that concept to begin with, right? So that is actually the challenge. But pretty much that, when you really have the right learning part through your education's part on the system engineering way, during the interview, I'm pretty sure that the student can impress a lot of the interviewee, right? Just because of the system thinking, the way they think, and how they were able to solve the problems that will make very unique for these people who are graduate from this particular disciplines. Not really a lot that you can find the job that is the listing that is right. I mean, system engineer as a role which fit into our descriptions. You find some now in Australia, Singapore, China, and some like Malaysia is pretty much driven by the specific industry that have relationship to the other company in the United States.
Okay. And maybe as a last question here in this podcast, let's switch a little bit to the topic of SysML modeling tools. So sometimes one has the feeling that SysML tools are somehow country specific. So there are Cameo countries and there are Rhapsody countries and so on. Is it also true for Singapore or the other Southeast Asian countries, or is it mixed? How is the market situation?
I take this one first, right? So, I believe company that who doing the MBSE tools that actually pushing, doing some marketing and market awareness education is pretty much is Dassault Systems and IBM. The one who really know MBSE, pretty much this is the two tools, right? Rhapsody and Cameo, or today Catia Magic is what they really know, aware of. Not much into the open source to begin with, right? Just because of the topic is not that popular. It's not really that they try to spend time to investigate. But this will be the two that I will say that in the professional level, production level, that is what they are really evaluating to focus on.
I would say even more Cameo than Rhapsody, because even IBM in the region is more focusing on the engineering lifecycle management, the ELM, so those next, and because this is something a bit more easy for customer to get, to capture, to understand, and that they can understand why they need requirement management. They can understand why they need test management, right? Or workflow management. But it's a bit harder for companies to understand why they need MBSE. So that's why, as IBM, I would say we push more on also myself, even if I would like to do more MBSE, more product line engineering, I end up doing more ALM, no, application lifecycle management. And while I would say Robert is more focused on MBSE, and I would say Cameo is probably, there's a bit more focus on Cameo than on Rhapsody, also by my experience with the clients and with what I would say. Yeah. There is a bit of enterprise architect as well, so a bit of Sparks.
Right. So we
Right,
put
Boston,
into like entry level, you find quite a lot of start with Spark, and then they go to the real production when they really understood, and they switch to either Rhapsody or Cameo. So pretty much this is the three big players that you can find.
And maybe with SysML things will change, and maybe they will adapt directly SysML v2 here.
Yes, that is what I see. You don't have much of the legacy SysML v1 as what you find in America. So as I say that, efficiency will be the key. The adaptability, how you can do things fast, no repeat to what linked to the discipline will be the key. Then there are a lot of hope in the SysML v2 that we are looking into right now. So I think ASEAN, Asia will catch up that pretty fast because they don't have the transitions.
Yeah, I also believe that. Yeah.
They pretty much can start.
Maybe even the textual notation is good for the Singaporeans because it's part, def, vehicle, and then you have it.
Yeah, exactly. It's more engineer friendly, I would say. Yeah.
It's code, right? It's code. They can touch it because it's like lines of code. That's something.
Yeah.
There is a notation behind the syntax notation behind the models, not just the. Otherwise, they tell you it's just a graphical notation, right? I mean, you need to explain a bit more why it's not just a graphical notation. But if you bring the notation and the syntax, the textual notation, then it would be definitely easier, I think.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, interesting. Yeah. So, well, yeah, let's come to an end. So, Robert and Marco, thank you very much for being our guests. And it was very interesting. In particular, I found your statement interesting about the efficient working methods, which is somewhat in conflict with systems engineering. Systems engineering more is about elaboration of the problem space, and so that's very interesting. And maybe SysML v2 is an opener for that. Yeah, so the next episode is not planned yet. Well, July is vacation time, but also INCOSE Symposium time in Dublin in 2 weeks. I will be there. Marco will be there. Robert, will you also be there?
Unfortunately, not this year.
But the symposium is a good opportunity to find good topics and guests for our next episode or other episodes. We will see. So yeah, with that, well, finally, do not forget.
Trust us, we are systems engineers. Goodbye.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.